Welcome to your first video lesson and the video lesson feedback quiz. Remember, what you're supposed to do this week is get started on the Digital Analytics Fundamentals modules that Google has put together. This is the first step in preparing you for the Google Analytics certification exam. So if you go to my webpage, drkrt.com, and go to the page for MK308, um, somewhere in the middle of the page, near where the link for the syllabus is, you'll see a link that actually says Analytics Certification Prep. That link will take you to the document that I handed out in class on Thursday. And so you'll have the link there directly to the first set of modules you need to go through. So you'll be working on those modules today and on Thursday, and you'll work on them the week after spring break as well. And then after that, you'll get started on the second set of modules, which are the platform principles. But for today, get started on that fundamentals modules, finish up this video lesson, complete the short feedback quiz related to this video lesson, and get yourself geared up to take the certification exam. So the videos are related to the readings in the digital marketing analytics, and then the other modules are what Google has put together specific to the certification. So the videos are more overall strategic, where the Google modules are very specific to their platform. Chapter 1 of the Digital Marketing Analytics book talks about the difference between paid, owned, and earned media. Now, these are terms that existed before online promotion even existed, before Google was even around. And so the book takes a little bit of time to talk about how paid, owned, and earned media existed before, and then how those terms are used now that we have the ability to promote online, including on websites and search engine optimization and with social media. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach than what your book spells out, and I'll explain why. But I want you to keep in mind that when it comes to talking about social, I differ. My opinion differs from what the book lists, where the book lists social media. But to start, old school, paid media was basically your advertising. So when you paid for the production of an ad and you paid for the placement, whether it was on a billboard, whether it was on television, whether it was in the midst of a magazine, that was paid media. Now you've got control over how your ad looks, and you typically choose where your ad goes, but you don't have any control over the environment around it. So for instance, one of the things that used to make tobacco companies crazy was in the 80s, if they placed an ad in a magazine, they might not know if they were going to be next to an article that talked about how horrible smoking was. Obviously, for a company, it's not ideal for your ad to be right next to an article that talks about you being evil. And so one of the drawbacks to paid media, traditional paid media, is you don't always have control over the environment in which you're in. The other drawback, of course, is that it's not very credible. Everybody knows it's an ad. Everybody knows you're trying to promote yourself, and they're going to basically discredit a portion of what you say because they assume you're exaggerating and bragging on yourself. Owned media is anything that you literally own. So old school owned media were things like the magazines that airlines put out that are in the seat back pocket in front of you every time you fly. This isn't the defunct SkyMall I'm talking about. I'm talking about Delta and American Airlines and Southwest literally printing a magazine. Um, the last 20 pages or so will have a list of what drinks they offer and where their various gates are at different locations where they fly to. But the bulk of the magazine are articles pretty touristy related, pretty travel related. So if they fly into Houston, maybe a list of cool new restaurants in Houston, or new activities that people are participating in different locations of theirs. So the nice part about owned media, of course, is that unlike paying for an ad to drop down in the middle of Sports Illustrated, when you create the entire magazine yourself, you've got control over the environment. Um, However, that content also doesn't have the same credibility as a regular form of media because everybody knows that this is the American Airlines magazine. So of course they're going to take everything in that with a grain of salt, just like they would with your regular ad. And then old school earned media was really publicity. So when WAND ran a story a week or so ago about the new water park that's supposed to open in the Decatur Park District, that was earned media. The Park District had written a press release. They had sent it to those various members of the local media, hoping that they would choose to do the story. And having a water park come to Decatur is actually newsworthy. And so they did. They ran a story that talked about the timeline and how many slides there were going to be and where it was going to go and you know and that way the Park District doesn't pay for the placement. They don't pay for the story itself on WAND. They just pay somebody to write the press release. You don't have any control over how the story gets covered, but your story has more credibility because it's WAND going, hey, look, this cool new water park is coming to Decatur, as opposed to the park district jumping up and down and going, look, we're cool. It's somebody else saying that about you, and so it's got more credibility. Now, with the advent of online and social, paid media is still anytime you pay for an ad to be produced and then placed in somebody else's content. So it could be a search engine results page. So if you went to Google right now and typed in online MBA and hit enter, the first couple of entries that pop up are clearly labeled as ads. And so the schools that have online MBA programs will have paid for certain search terms and they'll have paid for that to show up in front of you. Um, it's a little more complicated than that. A lot of them aren't paying anything unless you click through, but the point is you ask for it to be placed on Google's search engine result page. You might have also paid to have an ad placed on somebody else's website. So if you go to ESPN.com, the first thing that pops up is always some great big ad at the top, typically for a sports related company or for somebody like Chevrolet. And of course, you've all opened social media and had an ad on the right column of your Facebook page. And again, people have paid for those to be put together. Your textbook says that owned media, it would be, of course, your own websites or your own blogs, but they also claim that your social media presence is owned. And this is where the yearbook and I disagree. Obviously, your page on Facebook and the tweets you choose to put out and the posts you choose to put out on Instagram are yours, but you don't have any control over the people that tag you or use your brand name in a hashtag. And so I think that social media is much better to think of it like earned media. So when somebody tries your product, goes and watches your movie, and then comes home and brags about it, I've been hearing really amazing things about the movie Get Out. Then that's earned. You did this thing that's got people thinking about it and talking about it, and they chose to talk about it on social media. That's not something you own, and it's not something you control. And so whether it's a review on a blog, whether it's a review on Amazon.com, on Rotten Tomatoes, whether it's a post on Facebook that said, wow, that movie was fantastic, then it's earned media, not owned. So online has a whole lot more earned and owned media than what you would have had traditionally. And so it's really important to think about, how do I measure what works and how do I determine what I should be doing? So one of the things you can do is competitive intelligence. And this means checking out to see what the competitors are doing. So for instance, with search engine optimization, you might be looking to see what keywords your competitors use, to see if you're using the same ones or if they're focusing on a little bit different market or a different motivation for people to buy a product that you don't have. You may also be looking at, for instance, how big is their Facebook audience? How many people do they have that like their page? You might be looking at, Google has got some great tools that kind of help you figure out how much traffic your competitor is getting on their website. Now, when it comes to your own website, web analytics and conversion analytics both are basically your own owned media and how do people interact with that. So with web analytics, you tend to look at things like what search terms do people use to find your website? What platform are they on? You know, are they looking for you on mobile versus desktop? Things like what page did they start out on? How many pages did they visit? How long did they spend on each page? And we look at something called bounce rate that we'll get into more detail about later. But the idea is to figure out how do they behave once they get on the page, right? Now, conversion analytics is a very specific kind of web analytics. Here you've set a goal, your intention. What do you mean consumers to do once they get to your site? So it might be buy a product, it might be sign up for your newsletter, it might be request a quote from a salesperson, it might be to donate to your GoFundMe campaign. So with conversion analytics, you are measuring, you know, again, that end goal. What did you mean for people to do? How many people actually did it once they got to your website? Then obviously, of course, there's social media reporting. You guys are fairly familiar with this. Um, Here we're often looking to see, do our posts on social media actually send people to our websites or to the retailers that sell our products? And of course, we're looking to see how people engage with us. Have they liked us? Have they shared things or retweeted? Have they mentioned us without being prompted? And again, you're fairly familiar with that. User experience feedback is once again related to your own website, but this is more qualitative than quantitative. So often you're asking people, how was your overall experience? And what can we do to improve your experience on our website? And so this is basically an online survey that you ask people to take after they're finished playing around on your site. And then finally, there are real-time site analytics. So web analytics typically show you a report, a snapshot. Maybe it was a day, maybe it was a month, and maybe you compare month to month, but it's data of behavior that happened before. Real time site analytics is exactly what it sounds like. It is just what's going on right at this very minute to the second up to date. So obviously that requires a little bit more power in the algorithms that measure things because you're not waiting for people to be done with their behavior. You're looking at it as it happens. Okay, so that's all for this first chapter. So once you close this video, go back to drcareyt.com, look at the schedule, and you will see a link for VLF, which is Video Lesson Feedback 1. Click on that, complete the little Google form, and as long as you've already done your analytics modules for the day, you are done. Have a great Tuesday.